Hello, I'm Jeremy Vine, and this is Panorama.
The Scots have had 10 years of running their own affairs, but are they happy?
The idea of having a Scotland which was independent is neither absurd nor unlikely. I think it's inevitable.
Tony Blair is glad he gave them their own parliament, but he's well out of it now.
You've got to make the case continually, over and over again, as to why devolution's right but separatism's wrong.
The argument for breaking up the UK is not going away.
On Wednesday, it will be 10 years since Scotland got its own parliament. Boris Johnson says the Scots have done rather better out of it than the rest of the country, which you'd think would be a good incentive to stay in the UK. But another fork in the road is approaching. Brian Taylor reports on a restless Scotland and the future of the United Kingdom.
What makes us happy? The English, the Welsh, the Northern Irish, and of course the Scots. I've covered Scottish politics since Braveheart was a boy. Could making Scotland happy change the UK forever?
I'm a proud Scot, but to be honest, I don't actually own a kilt. For most Scots people, it's never been enough simply to wear tartan to express our national identity. Scottish people want more. We want the freedom to be different culturally and politically, and we always have.
So what would make us Scots happy? For some, that desire to be different was met 10 years ago by devolution. So thinks the Scot currently residing at number 10 Downing Street.
I think there's always been a strong Scottish sense of identity, and I think people feel Scottish. They also feel part of Britain. I mean, I come from Fife. I feel part of Fife, and we're all part of Europe. There is a strong Scottish identity. I think that's the most important part of what we've done. It's to recognise Scottish identity, but in the context, of course, of devolving power where we can.
Winifred Margaret Ewing, Scottish 18,397.
But some remain deeply unhappy. Nationalists believe devolution is far from enough. That's summed up by the woman whose famous by-election victory in Hamilton in 1967 created the modern Scottish National Party.
But we're not free. We're not free to decide what to do with our own wealth. We're not free to decide the policies. We're not free to decide what wars we will or will not fight. That is a most helpless, pathetic situation for a modern country to be in.
So there you have it, two fundamental arguments, one big choice. Independence for Scotland, the end of the Union, versus devolution, more powers for the Scots, but keeping the United Kingdom intact.
Lying behind these two arguments, a question of identity. Are the Scots happy to say they're British or Scottish? I set out my stall in Scotland's ancient capital of Stirling to find out.
We've set out all the stuff here, the icons of Scotland. What's your own identity? Do you feel Scots yourself?
Very much so.
I feel Scottish first and then British thereafter.
I'm definitely Scottish.
One young woman even came forward to express her Scottish identity with an impromptu dance. But how does that strong feeling of Scottish identity affect the future of the United Kingdom? Political scientists have been asking Scots about their identity for decades.
Typically in surveys we find around 3/4 or so of people in Scotland saying they are Scottish and no more than 1 in 5 saying they are British. People in Scotland who feel Scottish are certainly more likely to be in favour of independence or certainly will want greater autonomy from the rest of the United Kingdom. If you are in England and you feel English, you're hardly any more likely, for example, to want some form of devolution for England than if you say they are British. So in Scotland, Scottish national identity matters to the nation's politics in a way that national identity still doesn't really matter south of the border.
The Prime Minister who delivered devolution is an Englishman born in Scotland. He recognises the power of national identity And 10 years ago, he believes he stopped the Union breaking up.
The fact that for 100 years people have been trying to introduce devolution within the United Kingdom indicates there was a genuine need and desire and a genuine call that had to be answered. So, you know, I'm by temperament probably pretty unionist. On the other hand, I could see, and studying the history reinforced this feeling that there was a genuine desire on the part of people to have more say over the things that were happening around them, and that there was a genuine sense of Scottish identity. Now, I hope that was alongside a UK identity as well, but you know, people felt Scottish at the same time as British, and that had to be somehow acknowledged constitutionally.
Tony Blair firmly believes that devolution within the United Kingdom will make the Scots happy. He says it is an essential safety valve to counter nationalism and save the Union.
You know, supposing we'd refused devolution and just said that's it, I think you would have had enormous pressure building up, and people would have said in the end it's separatism or nothing. So in that circumstance, I think they might have been more inclined to go for separatism. But I've never been oblivious to the risks and dangers associated with it. Now, I think in the end, as I say, devolution is the right thing. It gives us, in its purest sense, the best of both worlds. But you've got to make the case continually, over and over again, as to why devolution's right but separatism's wrong.
However eloquently he makes that case, some won't be happy until the Union is unpicked. For the Scottish nationalists, devolution versus independence is indeed a clear choice.
Well, of course it's a choice, and devolution was what we regarded as a necessary step on the way to independence. We never thought it was an end in itself. We just hoped that we would do well enough to convince people we were making a better job of it than London, and particularly helped by all this debacle where Westminster being called dishonest and unable to deal with its affairs. I mean, this is going to be an enormous help to us. I don't know if people have analysed that yet, but it really will make people say, oh, well, we've got an honest parliament up here. Our people aren't in all this trouble.
Over the last 10 years, the Scottish Parliament was first to ban smoking in public places. They've transformed Scotland's ancient land laws and shaken up the rules covering marriage and childcare. So what do the Scots think of Holyrood?
Well, I think the Scottish Parliament actually made me feel more Scottish.
They're doing things for us. They're trying to better each other. They're doing things for us, that's all I can say.
They're helping out, they're helping the pensioners, they're doing everything for other people.
Scots like their parliament to be as Scottish as possible, and perhaps in keeping with that, they've now elected the chief nationalist as First Minister.
I have a rumour. I think we won the election.
In 2007, the Scottish National Party won a dramatic victory in the Holyrood elections, pipping Labour by a single seat. Alex Salmond makes no apologies for taking a tough line with London.
People don't elect a government in Scotland to stay quiet when Scotland's interests are at stake. They expect their government to speak up for them at every opportunity. Now, I'm quite happy to do it politely. I'm delighted to cooperate in anything and everything where it's possible to cooperate. But, you know, when Scotland's essential interests are at stake, then I shall speak up for all I'm worth, and I'll continue to do it, and I will not be apologising to anyone for doing my job.
Does Alex Salmond being in office make independence more likely? Since being in power, the Scottish nationalists have frozen the council tax, scrapped tolls on all bridges, and accused Westminster of withholding money due to Scotland. So, is devolution a slippery slope to Scottish independence?
Well, I think it's less of a slope and more of a cliff. We argued that once you got a parliament, that the nationalists would get power, that they would use it as a platform to break the union. All of that has happened. Alex Salmond's come along, and we've seen how he's used that as a platform to create division between England and Scotland, very successfully too, as part of his agenda to break the United Kingdom. And I think we're going to see a Conservative government at Westminster and a different administration, a nationalist administration at Holyrood, and that's going to be difficult.